Rain poured steadily from a gray sky, drumming against car roofs and pooling along the edges of the crowded street. The evening rush had turned the road into a river of honking horns and flashing headlights, each driver desperate to get home. Amid the blur of umbrellas and the impatient glow of traffic lights, one figure stood trembling at the edge of the crosswalk, an elderly woman gripping a worn cane, her frail frame dwarfed by the chaos around her. The light flickered green for pedestrians, but she did not move. Fear rooted her to the spot as cars revved their engines, ready to surge forward the moment the signal changed. Among the crowd waiting at the corner was a young woman, modestly dressed, her own umbrella barely keeping her dry. She noticed the old lady's trembling hands, the way her eyes darted nervously at the rushing vehicles, and without a second thought, she stepped away from the shelter of the crowd. Time seemed to slow as she folded her own fears into courage. Ignoring the impatient murmurs around her, she reached for the old woman's arm. The traffic light ticked down mercilessly, and horns blared in warning, but the girl didn't waver. In that instant, soaked by the rain and framed by the unforgiving rhythm of the city, she chose kindness over convenience. One step forward, then another, guiding a stranger across a road that seemed far more dangerous than it should have been. And with that choice, something extraordinary began. The girl tightened her grip on the old woman's arm, steady but gentle, and lifted her umbrella to shield the frail figure from the pouring rain. The two of them began their slow walk across the slick asphalt, every step measured against the impatient roar of engines waiting to burst forward. The young woman's own clothes clung to her, rain soaking her shoulders and hair, but she didn't flinch. Her focus was on the woman beside her, whispering quiet encouragement, as though the simple words could drown out the noise of the storm and the honking horns. Halfway across, a car sped too close, splashing a wave of cold water at their feet. Gasps rippled through bystanders at the corner, but the girl simply adjusted her pace, tightening her hold and keeping her body between the danger and the old lady. She moved with an instinct that was both protective and tender, as if this stranger were her own grandmother. Then, suddenly, the screech of brakes tore through the air. A sleek black car came to a halt just a few feet away, its polished surface reflecting the city lights and sheets of rain. The scene seemed to freeze, the drenched young woman shielding the old lady with her umbrella, the traffic light blinking urgently, and the powerful machine forced to yield. Behind the tinted glass, unseen eyes were watching, eyes that would carry this image far longer than the storm. In that suspended moment, compassion outweighed chaos, and kindness brought the city to a stop. Inside the black car, the man behind the wheel sat rigid, his hands still pressed firmly against the brake. He was a figure of power, tailored suit, sharp jawline, the weight of countless decisions resting on his shoulders. His schedule was carved to the minute, his life a constant pursuit of control and results. Yet, through the rain-streaked glass, all of that seemed to crumble. He couldn't look away from the sight before him, a young woman, drenched and trembling, her umbrella tilted awkwardly as she shielded a stranger who could barely walk. The traffic light blinked impatiently, signaling for them to hurry, but she moved at the old woman's pace, unbothered by the urgency of the world around her. Her face held no trace of annoyance, only calm determination, a quiet strength that felt foreign in his world of negotiations and numbers. Something stirred within him. A memory of simpler days, of his own grandmother who had once held his small hand crossing a road just like this. He realized with a sharp pang how long it had been since he'd felt that kind of warmth, how far success had carried him from the tenderness of human connection. For the first time in years, the CEO's chest tightened not from stress, but from something far more vulnerable. Watching her, he felt the faint but undeniable crack of light breaking through the walls he had built around his heart. And in that fleeting moment, he knew his life had shifted. As the old woman reached the safety of the opposite curb, she released a shaky sigh of relief, whispering a soft thank you that nearly vanished into the rain. The young woman bent slightly, brushing the damp hair from the elder's face with a reassuring smile, unconcerned by the fact that her own blouse clung to her skin and her shoes were ruined by puddles. She looked utterly ordinary, yet in that moment, there was a quiet radiance about her, the kind that came not from appearance, but from the depth of her heart. The sound of a car door opening broke the moment. From the sleek black vehicle, the man stepped out, the storm plastering his expensive suit to his frame. His assistant called after him, stunned, but he ignored it. He wasn't thinking about the meeting he was late for or the deal waiting on his signature. His eyes were locked on the girl. When she finally noticed him, she straightened, her brows furrowing in polite confusion. Their gazes met across the rain-drenched street. For an instant, the world seemed to blur, the honking cars, the rushing strangers, the endless gray of the city, fading until only the two of them remained. He had spent years surrounded by luxury and power, but never had he seen something so disarming as her simple kindness. She gave a small, almost embarrassed smile, as if unaware of the impact she'd made. And in that fleeting exchange, the guarded man felt something unfamiliar, hope stirring in his heart. The old woman, now safe on the sidewalk, clasped the young girl's hand with surprising strength. Her voice trembled with gratitude as she whispered, "Bless you, child. May kindness always follow you." The girl laughed softly, brushing it off as if what she had done was nothing extraordinary. To her, it was simply the right thing to do. Yet to the woman, and to the man watching, it was everything. The CEO stepped closer, shrugging off his tailored jacket despite the rain. Without hesitation, he draped it over the girl's shoulders, the fine fabric heavy and warm against her soaked clothes. She blinked in surprise, ready to protest, but the sincerity in his eyes silenced her. It wasn't just a gesture of comfort, it was the first offering of a man who had just been reminded what it meant to care. For a brief moment, the three of them stood together under the storm. The frail elder, the brave stranger, and the man who had witnessed a small act of courage that cracked open his guarded soul. Around them, life hurried on, cars surged, umbrellas bobbed, deadlines loomed, but within their circle, time felt still. The young woman smiled, radiant even through dripping rain, and the man felt something he hadn't in years, the undeniable certainty that he was standing at the beginning of something life-changing. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes, it begins with an umbrella, a helping hand, and the simple, transformative power of kindness.